The Brandywine reaches right through our countryside and into the city of Wilmington. There's millions of people that live along it or near it. This Brandywine expedition is launching the Brandywine Education Program. Essentially, when you're an educator, you teach in your first person. But what we saw is that people knew different pieces of this river, but they weren't looking at the entire ecosystem. In fact, no one in an organized group has ever paddled the entire river until now. So this was our way of telling the story of the Brandywine to our partners, but also to the public, and particularly the schools, of what an opportunity is to bring more people there, particularly students, so that we can all learn, love, and embrace this river.
This river starts in the Welsh Mountains of Pennsylvania, and it is in the Piedmont section. And in its course going toward the Delaware River, it drops and it goes through the coastal plain. And what happens here at Hagley is the river drops 124 feet in its last 5 miles. So that change in height allows gravity to work on the water, and in fact it allows it to produce horsepower to do work. And so the river became really the driving force, not only for the gunpowder mills, but really for hundreds of mills that were up and down the river.
Why is the Brandywine important? Well, it's the largest source of drinking water for the largest city in Delaware, Wilmington, and it's also the largest source of drinking water for Chester County, Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful river that's right in the heart of the eastern megalopolis. So people can come within a dozen miles or so and be in this beautiful river, raft in it, hike along it, and also drink the water and even fish in it.
300 years ago, this river right behind me teemed with American shad that migrated up every year for centuries. The Lenape Indians lived on the shores of this river and used them for a food source. Then we began building dams for power to make corn and wheat, et cetera, and this was really the Silicon Valley of the 18th century. But fast forward today, and these dams generally don't provide any purpose at all. And so our organization, Brandywine River Restoration Trust, our mission is to restore the river to enable American shad and other migratory species migrate up the river for the first time in 300 years. We're also really trying to help provide community access to our river. This is a beautiful river. It's right here in downtown Wilmington.
The forks of the Brandywine, just a few miles north of where we're standing here, around the area around present-day Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, was the site of the largest land battle of the Revolutionary War. On September 11th, 1777, General George Washington and the Continental Army trying to prevent a British army under the command of General William Howe from capturing Philadelphia. And there was sort of long, multi-hour battle that ranged over many hundred acres of land, all watered by the Brandywine. And so it's an incredible place to visit today. A lot of that landscape has not changed since the 18th century and continues to be a really inspiring place to reflect on American history, art, and culture.
So I think a great citizen science, or we call it community science project for students would be to get an understanding of how clean the water is based on what kind of bugs we find in the water, similar to what we did earlier. So looking at the macroinvertebrates, it can be a really quick way to use them as bioindicators to understand whether or not the water is relatively clean or relatively polluted.
Watersheds are one of those key units that we're looking at in terms of both supporting students getting access to places in that watershed for learning purposes, investigative purposes, and also because if we're going to help address some of the challenges that exist in places like the Delaware Bay or the Brandywine River, students need to investigate that, understand what some of the challenges are, and then propose action opportunities to be able to help address some of those challenges or support ones that might exist out there. And that's one of the key things that a program like the Bay Watershed Education and Training Program does, is provide that access, support it in a standards-connected way for students in school.
We have programming that has kids take a look at what's living in the stream, how healthy it is. We're looking at macroinvertebrates and identifying them. So we have ways that we try to have kids learn how to interact with the water and their surrounding environment. We offer programs, student programs called water power tours, where they learn about how water was used to generate power in the 1800s and we start asking the questions, well, how are we generating power today?
So for over 50 years, the Brandywine Conservancy has worked to protect the Brandywine watershed through a variety of our programs and activities, primarily through land conservation. Over the 50+ years we've been in operation, we've protected over 70,000 acres through fee acquisitions, conservation easements, or with partnerships with other organizations. So access is important because people who are interacting and traveling on the creek and enjoying recreation on the creek are more likely to be involved in helping preserve that resource for the long term and future generations.
Just being out on the water is it's a crazy different experience. You can hike and bike and run alongside the creek, but once you're actually on it, I think that really adds a totally new perspective. And there's something just so peaceful and almost archaic about that I really appreciate.
You know, I work on rivers all across the Mid-Atlantic, and there is no river like the Brandywine. I look behind me at how clean and clear and wonderful it is. The mayflies we caught today, which is an indicator of excellent water quality. It's a wonderful resource, but it's also a resource that's fascinating because of the history, but also for its future. With climate change and flooding, there's going to be issues we have to address. So to me, it's like the perfect laboratory, it's a perfect classroom for us to embrace, but also to learn about.